Hello, what we're going to be doing today is making some choux pastry. Now this is sometimes something that doesn't always work for me, so I'm hoping to be able to do this in one take. I'll let you know if that hasn't been the case. I've been really impressed with some of the food that students have been producing, and actually they tend to come out better than what I'm producing at the moment, so well done to everybody. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to get everything ready. So I've got my strong plain flour, butter, my 2 eggs. I'm going to have 75 millilitres of water, and in this recipe I'm also going to have 75 millilitres of milk. I've preheated my oven to 220 degrees. It needs to be a really hot oven, so do make sure that you're doing that. So first question for today is I've actually used the strong white bread flour. Why do you think I might be using the strong flour rather than maybe using plain or self-raising? Now if you can't get hold of strong flour, do just use plain flour, it's not a problem. Okay, so I've already sieved my flour into this bowl. So I'm going to put my butter. You could use margarine instead of butter, so if you can't get hold of the hard butter like this, do just use margarine. I'm then going to measure out my milk and my water. Now 75 millilitres in a measuring jug is quite difficult, but if you have got measuring spoons at home, each large tablespoon in your measuring spoons is actually 15 millilitres. So if you do 5 tablespoons of water and 5 tablespoons of milk, I'm going to turn my hob on. I'm just going to turn it on to a low temperature to start with. I'm just wanting that butter to melt. So a couple of other questions for you just whilst we're waiting for this to melt. So I've already asked the question about why might I use the strong flour rather than a plain or self-raising flour. So some other questions for you. What is the raising agent that's going to be used in this recipe? So what's the raising agent going to be in this recipe? Another question. Gelatinization and coagulation is used in this recipe, but how is it being used and why? So gelatinization and coagulation is being used in this recipe. Why and how is it being used? And then the last question, we're going to cook these in the oven. We're going to take them out and we're going to put holes into the bottom of these and then put them back into the oven. Why are we going to do that? So why are we going to put them in for a second time with holes in the bottom? So I will do those questions again later on, but just so you know what the questions are straight away. So we want this to come up to the boil. So you're going to start to see some steam coming off. So some of that liquid will evaporate away, but that is absolutely fine. and it needs to come up to a rolling boil. Now if that doesn't happen, that means that you might end up with some mistakes later on. If you're still not 100% sure about this, do have a look at the BBC Good Food video on choux pastry, and that should give you a really good idea. So as it's boiling, what I'm going to do is shoot in, so just get in the flour all in one go. And I'm going to start mixing straight away. So you may find that it looks pretty disgusting at the moment. And then all I'm going to do is just continue to stir. So I'm going to turn that off. And I'm really going to beat this until it all comes together. Now, if yours is not like this at this stage, something has gone wrong already, so you may need to start again. It has to form this ball of dough in this way. So I've turned the heat off, and I'm going to start to cool that down. So what I'm actually going to do is take it out of the saucepan, and I'm just going to put it into a bowl, and then I'm going to leave that to cool for a couple of minutes. So my recipe has asked for 2 eggs. What I'm going to do is I'm only going to add 1 to start with until I know that I've got the right consistency. You're going to know when your dough is cool enough because you'll be able to touch it. We don't want to be adding those eggs in too quickly, otherwise they're going to cook too soon. Remember that eggs don't take very long to cook, so we don't want these to go in early. So the reason that I've just moved the dough into this is just so that it helps with the cooling. Obviously, being in a saucepan, it might keep its heat a little bit longer. So I probably allowed that a good 5-10 minutes to really cool down. It was very hot when it first came out, so I've just let that cool down completely. So what I'm going to do is, I've only cracked 1 egg in here, so I'm going to just pour that in. And then just continue to mix. It's quite difficult to mix. If you are struggling with this, you could use an electric whisk to do this. But I do find it sometimes better just to do it all by hand. So it does look a little bit like scrambled eggs to start with, but it should start to come together. And I'm kind of using the back of the wooden spoon to really start mixing that together. The other reason why I did 1 egg is because I've actually got quite large eggs, and obviously I don't want to be doing too much. So what we're looking for is a good dropping consistency. So at the moment, that's not a very good dropping consistency. In fact, it takes quite a lot to get out of there. So I am going to be adding that second egg. Just giving it a quick whiz. And then adding that in now as well. And then continue to mix. So once everything is really together, so you can see there I've got really good dropping consistency now. It's much easier to get off the spoon than it was before. So I've got my lined baking tray, and what you can do is you can either do it one of two ways. You can either use a piping bag, and you can get these reusable ones from most supermarkets, or the other thing you can do is if you're just doing profiteroles, so just round ones, you could just use a teaspoon. So I'll show you both ways just so that you know how to do it. So I'll start with the profiterole way. I'll need that spoon back in a minute. And then all I'm going to do, you could quenelle these very slightly so that you get more of a circle, and then just pop them onto there. So you'll notice this is a very different way of working with pastry compared to the puff pastry that we've done, or the short crust pastry. So the spoons are helping very slightly just to shape it in the way that you want. If you're wanting more of the eclair size, what you can do is using a piping bag. Now this doesn't have a hole in it at the moment, but I can add that later on. Put those down. So you can use different nozzles and all sorts of things, but actually you can just do it without as well. The piping way might be just a little bit quicker. And if you fold the top of the piping bag down, you can then turn it back out and everything is inside. Then just shake it down to the bottom, and if it's not really going there, you can then start to squeeze from the top. Obviously remember at the moment I've not got a hole at the bottom, so I'm just going to make that now so that the air out of that is a little bit, there we go, it's much easier now. So when you're using a piping bag, all you're going to do, so my left hand is just sitting and guiding on there, I'm not squeezing from the top. And all I'm going to do is then twist the top, and that's where you're then going to get the mixture down. So all I'm then going to do, hopefully you can see, is then just squeeze onto the baking tray. Yes, there we go. Spoon to help. There we go. So you continue to do those shapes, or you could do some straight ones, so you then get the eclairs. some water, and all I'm then going to do is then just neaten those tips off. And I've just dipped my finger into the water and then just done that. So then I can just continue. So there you have it. You've got my choux pastry is about to go into the oven. I'm then going to be putting that in for 10 to 15 minutes. So I will then show you what they then should look like. I have just done a little sprinkling of water over the top of them as well, just to add some steam. So these have been in the oven for 5 minutes at 220, and then I turn the temperature down to 200 for a further 10 minutes. What you need to get is, if you've got a cake tester, you can use one of those, or if you've just got a skewer, you can use one of those. And all I'm going to do is turn them over. Just do this quite carefully and just put a hole in the bottom and just turn that round. So I'm going to continue with the rest of them. So putting the holes in the bottom is being done for a number of reasons. One is hopefully to let out the steam that's inside. Oh, a little bit too big. But it's also going to help with being able to pipe in your filling. Just be really careful because it is really hot. So I've turned them over as well very slightly, and I'm just going to pop those back into the oven just for a couple of minutes, just to dry out the inside. And there you have it. You have got your complete filling. Your complete choux. What you then can do is allow these to cool down before you do any filling at all. They will be very, very hot. So if you try putting any cream in there at the moment, they will just turn to liquid. So if you've whipped any cream, do have a look on the BBC Good Food, and you can have a look to see what kind of fillings that you can do, and then hopefully you'll be able to get those. But that is probably one of the best times that I've ever made choux pastry. If you ask any of my year 10s or 11s in previous classes, you'll be able to see, they'll be able to tell you how bad mine have come out. Even the year 9s, they've seen some of my terrible choux pastry, so they're just getting better and better. So do have a go at those. Good luck.